Morning, everybody. I'm just in awe of our other panelists and our other speakers. You're all heroes to me. And you guests, who are students, you will, I know you're going to become great leaders, I think, in our quest to be free of abortion. So I really appreciate you coming on this cold morning, and it is early too on a Saturday. Certainly, well, let me welcome to Lifetech, and I want to introduce our panelists here. My fellow panelist, Patty Belliveau. Say hi. She's worked at Adoption Link since 2007. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in 1990 from Kent State University in Individual and Family Studies. Became a licensed social worker in 1992. Adoption has always been part of Patty's family life. Her siblings, cousin, eldest daughter, all joined the family through the blessing of adoption. Prior to working with Adoption Link, Patty worked in community service programming, focusing on services for children, teens, and women. She and her husband have 2 daughters who keep them very happily busy. And Patty will address the role of adoption when we get to our panel discussion. And promote the practice of adoption. Bill Nance is co-founder of Faith and Friends Radio, built in there, which is an internet radio service. Bill is a 50-year almost veteran of radio, television, broadcasting. He's a recipient of more than 50 state, regional, and national awards for journalistic excellence. Bill has served in Christian radio since 1989 as program director and morning show host. He was inducted into the Broadcasters Hall of Fame in 2007. Bill is active in his local church with charitable organizations. He resides in the greater Dayton area with his wife Carol. Together they have 2 children and 7 grandchildren. Bill is also an avid collector of Coca-Cola memorabilia. And interesting, my wife is a big fan of Coca-Cola. Her parents are both work for a Coca-Cola company. Margie Christie is now executive director of Dayton Right Foundation, Dayton Right to Life Foundation. She'll discuss the role of Dayton Right to Life in the pro-life radio campaign, and Dayton Right to Life is a major partner in the planning and organizing of the radio ad campaign, along with the Adoption Link, and along with the radio industry. So I'm Brian Garrison, and I'm a program manager. I work out at Base, so that's my vocation. I've worked there for most of my career, and I love to bring diverse teams together and unite the teams for large and small projects in aerospace. Bring it to successful completion on cost and on budget and on time. We're the pro-life radio ad campaign could be a rather large and complex project, I think. So I'm very excited about that. I was adopted as an infant and found I found my family through DNA, at least half of my family, just through DNA testing. So that's very exciting. My wife Joanne and I live in Washington Township. We have 3 children. Okay, let's see. Can you flip that now? Okay, there we go. So there's the next one. So I had some slogans here. So some of them I have many of them, but I like these. Choosing Mothers Choose Life and Choosing Mothers Choose Adoption. Thanks. So this is a Pew Research poll. 3 out of every 5 Americans believe that basically adoption's okay. I mean, adoption is okay, but abortion is fine. But I don't know, they ask a question, I think people say, yeah, well, all my friends are for it, so I'm for it. So, but if you ask these same people, is it okay to kill an innocent person? Period. Yes or no? You think that would? The poll would turn out differently? I think so. So we must tell people, keep telling people, continue telling people the truth about abortion, that it is intentional, premeditated killing of a healthy, innocent person. And abortion is a cold and heartless execution. That's what it is. So how do we get through to the 60%? And that's a lot of people. That's millions of people. So how we get through to them is mass market advertising. Have you ever gone a day without hearing an ad or seeing an ad? No, I don't think any one of us has. Even if you're out away camping, you probably see some billboards. So successful enterprise all advertise through mass media. Every large company, small company, almost all of them advertise through mass media. And the right to life community is a huge enterprise. So why do we advertise on radio? Why advertise on radio as opposed to another medium, another mass market medium? Radio reaches a very large audience. So I sound like those ads that say, listen to radio, advertise on radio. So I'm shilling for the radio industry here. But dollar for dollar, radio advertising does reach a very large audience. It's thought to appeal to people's intellect and emotions, whereas TV is thought to appeal more just to their emotions, and not so much to intellect and reason. This is talk radio. So the radio message reaches the whole person, left brain and right brain. And I think that's more persuasive than a TV message. Now, a radio ad, producing a radio ad is simpler because you don't have the production, the video production concerns. On the downside, you can't show the images on radio. You can't show the images of an unborn little tiny person on a radio in utero. So, and as far as radio, Mr. Nance will have more to say about that. We look forward to that. So who is the target audience? The target audience of the radio ads is women in crisis pregnancies. And what is the message? Well, the message is complex, so it would be 60-second ads, I think. It would be 60-second ads to convey that whole message. The message consists of several elements. To persuade a woman in crisis pregnancy to choose life, the ad must do the following. It must demonstrate that the entity that's growing within the expectant mother, the target listener, is actually a living person. The ad must provide an attractive alternative to killing an innocent baby. The ad must provide a hotline that the expectant mother can call. And when she reaches the hotline, she'll be guided through step by step by a professional and she can begin to solve her problem in a positive manner. So what tools and techniques and strategies are persuasive? To maximize empathy, the speaker should be a woman of childbearing age, speaking in the first person, telling the story of a mother, maybe yourself, maybe someone else, who has chosen adoption for her child. And we may use a speaker who's not the mother, for anonymity purposes and that kind of thing. But we'll still be talking in the first person to convey empathy. We want to produce two versions of the ad. We may produce two versions. One would be an African American female speaker, the other with a Caucasian American female speaker. Here's some phrases that might be used in the ad. I was scared. I realized my baby had a beating heart. I thought there was no way out except abortion. Then I learned adoption was an option. I learned that there were many couples who wanted a baby but couldn't have one of their own, and who could give my child a very good life, lots of love. When I finally made the decision, I chose adoption. I knew I had saved the life of a beautiful child, my own flesh and blood, by choosing adoption. At the end of the ad, an announcer would provide a hotline number. When the caller calls the hotline, an experienced professional will guide her through the process, the next step in saving the baby's life. I believe that most listeners who hear the radio ad, including and especially the expectant mothers, would recognize that abortion is the important killing of an innocent person. So in other words, they'll change their minds. Many expectant mothers who hear this message will likely choose adoption. No woman wants to think of herself as a killer. Fundraising. In order to produce the ads, we obviously need to raise funds to pay for the ads. The funds would come from throughout the pro-life community, everybody, not just the Christian church, secular organizations, Jewish organizations, doctor organizations, obstetricians, all kinds of organizations throughout the community. And it's a very big community. The donations would go to a special account managed by the Dayton Life Foundation, which is a 501c3, and a major partner in this campaign. Those funds would be used to pay for the ads. We will also need volunteers to raise the money. I know we'll probably need lots of volunteers. So we'll sort of build a little organization of volunteers just for the project to do the ads. For pro-life, so the follow-on, for pro-life, pro-adoption advertising, for it to be successful, it has to be done over time, years for years. So we have follow-on campaigns, and hopefully they will spread to other regions of the country. The initial campaign will take probably 4 weeks. That's the typical minimum for radio stations. Then the project team would review the effectiveness after the campaign's over, and figure out what to do differently for the next one to make it better. Don't they say every 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step? And this is the first step that we're talking about now. There's every reason to believe when the first step is over, when people start hearing this message, that there'll be more support. I think more fundraising will become easier, not harder. So, in conclusion, radio advertising works, and it will save lives. And now, we'll have the rest of the panel introduce themselves and give a brief statement, and then we'll have a Q&A after that.
Okay, they've had me start out here. Let me just give you a few highlights here of reason being in radio, why pro-life organizations and or anyone else shouldn't advertise in radio. But let's specifically look at what we're talking about today. You're reaching the right audience and a responsive audience. Now, you might say, well, there are people out there considering abortion who are not Christians. True. Statistics over the years that I've been in Christian radio have shown that 20-25% of any Christian radio station's audience is not a Christian. They're curious, they're seekers, they're wondering, well, what's that music all about, or what are those programs all about? Faith and Friends Radio, we're internet-based, we're locally focused here to serve the local community, but we happen to be worldwide because we're on the internet. And so easy as being on these smartphones. This is the transistor radio of today. Only thing I have to do is take it out to my car, turn the radio on, it's Bluetooth connected, and there is our station. Don't have to listen to an AM or FM and lose the signal about an hour away, 60 miles away. So there's the right audience, they're responsive. Audience in Christian radio is generally, and this is across the board and over the years hasn't changed much, about 2/3 female. 2/3 female. So you're reaching a right audience, a responsive audience, and even if you have 75% or so who are believers, who are Christians, they have problems too. Some of them face the decision of an unwanted pregnancy. So what should they do? With Christian radio, the rates are reasonable. We offer for nonprofits a 2-for-1. So if you buy one ad, you get a second one free. There are extra opportunities for interviews and to place some other kinds of exposure on the radio station. Of course, repetitiveness is important. They say you have to hear an ad of any kind 7 times for it to even register. So repetitiveness is important. We have partnered over the years, my years at WFCJ, our 7.5 years at Faith and Friends Radio with pro-life groups at events. Dayton Right to Life is a prime example that we partnered with them. One great segment we've had some success on, Right to Life sponsored these for a while, and then we did some other things. They took their advertising dollars to do something else, but the Frank Pavone segments, he's a priest, and he does 60-second messages, about 30 or 40 that we've had in rotation, that are right on. Nobody can argue the issue about abortion with Frank Pavone because he hits every aspect of it right on and just wipes out any idea about the abortion idea. Everybody ought to hear him because there's no way to argue with him. Right now we're looking to possibly partner with an arm of Catholic Social Services and their organization based in Cincinnati to underwrite or sponsor these. So a lot of opportunities for radio to get the message, and everything that Brian said is absolutely true, to get the message out. He mentioned that I could collect Coca-Cola memorabilia. Well, we all know about Coca-Cola, probably why, all the advertising they've done over the years. I was convicted of drinking Coca-Cola as a kid because of advertising. Radio advertising affected me. Coca-Cola, not Pepsi, not Dr. Pepper, the others, but Coca-Cola seems to have done more radio and TV advertising over the years than any other soft drinks. That's why, overall, they're number 1. Advertising works.
Hi, I am Patty Belliveau, and I work in the field of adoption. I'm what's called an adoption assessor, which means that I work with the woman who calls us and says, I'm an expectant mother and I'm making some decisions about what I'm going to do with this pregnancy. It may be that we hear from her early in the pregnancy, it may be later. And there are situations where we hear from an expectant mother after the baby's born through the hospital as well. But I work with these women, very courageous women who are exploring what life holds for them in a very rough situation. And so we walk with this woman, exploring her options, whether she's going to parent, whether she's going to place her child for adoption, and we help her work through those possibilities. And what does that look like for her? When we do that, we don't just say, yay, adoption, let's do this, and walk away. We take her through the process of what does adoption look like? What do the families that I'm interested in look like? What does the hospital situation look like? Who's there for me to support me in my decision? So we'll walk through all of that with her and what her resources are, supporting her through her delivery, pregnancy, placement. We will certify the family who is adopting her child. They're already certified by the time that she meets that family. We'll help her select a family, and she can interview and work with as many families as she wants to before she makes that decision. That is very, very important that she has that choice. And then we also follow the children until their finalization, until their court hearing that says this is a permanent and bonding transition. So what is adoption? It's taking parental rights from one party, it's a legal transaction, and transferring them to another party, whether it's an individual or a couple. It is a legal transaction. So it's a permanent and binding situation. It is not foster care. Adoption is very different than foster care. But foster care is one of the options that she should be presented with. Kinship care, foster care, there are a lot of different types of adoption that she needs to explore because she has choices. Again, there are many choices for her out there. So I would say that everybody in this room is probably touched by adoption. Can you raise your hands if you know someone who's adopted or have adoption in your family? I would say just about everybody in this room. I'm personally touched by adoption. Like he said, my sisters are adopted, my cousin's adopted, my oldest daughter is adopted. I was joking that our best friends, all 5 of their children are adopted. And so I'm not adopted, and I have one biological daughter, to which she jokes. She joked, well, she wasn't joking, she was serious to my husband and said, now who's my birth daddy? And he said, honey, you're stuck with me. So adoption has really just kind of permeated my life, and it's natural and comfortable for me to be in this world. But many of you know someone who's adopted, or you've touched it briefly, or you've heard stories, or you've seen something on TV, and it may or may not have been a positive representation of adoption. And I think that it's important that we recognize how much adoption is around us. Approximately 135,000 adoptions are completed in the United States each year. 1.7 million homes contain a child that's adopted, that was adopted. We say was adopted, that not is adopted because they were adopted, that transaction happened. Now they are a child who happened to have been adopted. They are a full-fledged member of that family, and it's a label they don't necessarily need to carry. So 4% of all homes have children that are adopted in them, who have been adopted in them. Of these, about 13 to 14,000 of those homes involved infants who are voluntarily relinquished domestically. That means that their birth mother chose to place them voluntarily. They weren't removed from her for any reason. She made a very conscious decision to place her child for adoption. And that could have looked many different ways. I'm not going to get into the details unless it's a question. Whether it's an open adoption, a closed adoption, a semi, anywhere in between there, adoption, kinship, and so forth. So adoption has always been practiced in our communities. Sometimes it's been positive, sometimes it's been kind of horrific. As we look at, some of our communities are very against adoption, and I think it's our job to educate what adoption looks like today. It is no longer an orphan train going across the country where children are put up for adoption on a train car and auctioned off almost as if they were a slave. It is no longer that. And I would like to erase put up for adoption from our language. I would prefer that we would say carefully placed for adoption, because it shows the thought that was put into that decision. So I think, as we talk about the women that we work with, I think that we need to understand that there are many influences in her decision-making on how she's going to proceed with her pregnancy, and where she's going to go with parenting or adoption or abortion. I think we need to help her see the possibilities. There are a lot of voices of condemnation, and she thinks that maybe making a certain decision will be easier than the other decision. I don't think there are any easy decisions for her in this situation. So I think as a community we need to be educated. We need to understand what her choices are. If we're going to ask her to make the decision to parent, by golly, we need to be behind her, supporting her with the resources and the education and the referrals to help her do that in every way possible. I've already talked about what we do as assessors, as adoption assessors, and how we help her work through those decisions. I know that we have done a lot of time here, so I guess really if you hear anything from me, I would like you to hear that even though a lot of grieving, a lot of hardship, a lot of difficult decisions are surrounding this decision, that I would like her to know that I guess this decision is full of dignity and hope, and that she should be respected and honored, and that she has choices in how this plays out every step of the way. And as a community, we need to show her that that not only is she giving her child life, but she's giving herself life through this decision. And I guess we need to speak to her that this decision is full of possibility and hope. So I guess that's my main takeaway.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, from the pro-life community perspective, I think a lot of times in our pro-life world we get charged with, well, I know I've been charged with, if you've ever been out in front of the abortion clinic or somewhere and someone yells and screams by, well, you don't care about the mom. Or what about the mom? What are you going to do? Are you going to take the baby home and take care of it? We get that argument quite often. And so I've always been proud of Dayton Right to Life and the fact that we say, please choose life and then we're going to help you. Okay? So we operate a baby pantry. I don't know if many of you know that, but we help moms with diapers, formula, all that kind of stuff, up until size 5T toddler. So we're going to help those moms. We have college scholarships. We do all kinds of things. We do walk the walk and talk the talk. We do care about mom and baby. And I think that's important because we have to give that adoption option to them. We can't just say, hey, choose life, good luck with that. Hope it works out for you. And we have to, as a pro-life community, address the mother, the decision maker. Sometimes we get focused on the baby, and I get that, but we need to focus on that decision maker mom, who, and how's that going to affect her. And to have that other, I like to say I need lots of arrows in my quiver in the pro-life world, and I got to have adoption as one of the arrows in my quiver against this. Everyone says, why can't we shut down that abortion clinic in Kettering? There's so many different things going on. Can we work legislatively? Yes. Can we try to get more regulations? Yes. But until we change minds and hearts of the decision maker walking in that building, it's a money thing for him. As long as women keep giving him money, he's going to stay open, and he's going to find ways to stay open. So we've got to change minds and hearts and build a culture of life in our community. Adoption does that. And I like the radio ads aspect. Well, first of all, I love Bill Nance's voice because I kind of grew up listening to Bill Nance. So when I hear his voice, it's like this nice warm blanket that I have because I just grew up to WING and all that kind of stuff. So I hear Bill Nance's voice. But it's interesting, I've spoken to probably hundreds of post-abortive women in my office. And one thing they'll say is, I was wanting a sign. If I just would have had a sign, if one person would have said something, or, one other person, they have all these voices talking to them in their head, and they said, if I just would have had a sign or something, I kept praying for a sign. What if that sign was the radio ad? What if, grandma heard the radio ad? and that changed her mind? What if mom heard it? What if dad heard that radio ad and was able then to talk to mom? So I just think, it just reaches those folks when maybe we can't be there. And maybe they don't want to reach out and make that phone call. They don't know what to do, and they hear that radio ad. And I like the aspect of the internet. All these women today are on the internet. Can we get to them in all these different ways and promote that message? So just as the pro-life community, we need all these arrows in our quiver to fight this atrocity in our society. And if radio ads is one of those arrows, then I'm all for it, and so be it. Let's keep hitting them maybe with the radio ads. Let's try other things. Let's go to the churches. Let's be in front of the clinics. Let's give them as many signs, if that's what they want to call them, as possible to change their minds at that particular moment. And so that's why I love campaigns like this, and it gets the community involved. Maybe you have that one person that says, what can I do? I can't do anything. I'm not going out in front of the clinic. That's not for everybody. I don't want to, I can't do this. I can't do that. What can I do? I can support a radio ad. I can do that. I can help out. That's something that I can do. So again, it gives us another arrow in that quiver to get more people involved. Like Brian said, it takes a lot of volunteers. But if that's your thing, if radio ads is something you want to get behind, then this is perfect for that. So I just think it hits all the right arrows that I need, and all it gives us just more ammunition in this fight. And it really is a fight. I mean, it's phenomenal that this, and I don't know how many of you are familiar, that this Dr. Haskell, the Women's Med Center, has been in operation since the 80s, since I was in high school. And that's a long time. This I shouldn't even say clinic, this mortuary kills 45 babies a week in Montgomery County. 45 babies a week. We need these ads. We need people out front. We need all these different, like I said, arrows in our quiver to get to this atrocity and just close this guy down. So again, love the ideas. I love radio. Like I said, they need a sign. Let's give them a sign. Let's let them hear that. And like I said, it doesn't even have to be mom. Maybe it's dad. Maybe it's grandma that hears the radio ad. I never thought about adoption. She made a great point. The African American community, it's a stigma for them. We struggle. Adoption to them is just something that they don't even want to consider. They would rather abort than adopt. In our experience that we found. So if we can really get into that community and take that stigma away from us and do better educating, as Patty talked about, and all those options, and share our adoption stories. Like we said, I would never have guessed all those hands would have went up in this room, that all of us were touched by adoption. We just don't really talk about it and share about our good stories with adoption and the positiveness there. So got me going on my soapbox. Yeah, that's my.
Okay, before Q&A, Margie brought up signs. She talked about signs, and so I must comment on that. I have been united with my birth family. I was adopted as an infant. I think I mentioned that before, but there's more to that. At the same time, I got the really strong feeling of a successful a radio ad campaign. At the same time that happened, I also was able to contact my family through DNA, just through a DNA test. It's like a needle in a haystack. But what happened after that, and this all concluded this week, I have several relatives that were isolated from each other. Now they're all talking to each other. My first cousin is talking to her father. So it's a sign. It's a sign, and it's a miracle. My first cousin said it was a miracle, so it must be. So, she said it on her own. It was what I was thinking, but she said it. So the other thing is the empathy thing. So if you put yourself in the position of a woman in a crisis pregnancy, and then you are able to learn that there are resources available, you're probably in a situation where you don't think a lot of people really care about you. And to learn, if you learn, my goodness, they're gonna do this at a baby pantry. They, might help with birth, the birth. There may be obstetricians or whatever that will give you a reduced rate. I don't know, but the baby pantry and the counseling, you have a friend to talk to, walk you through the whole process. I think that's a big asset. And I don't think that most of these birth mothers know or have any clue, any idea that those things are available. So with that, we can go into the Q&A session.
I just say one thing.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I just want to say one thing since you're speaking about resources. When, just so that everybody knows, when a woman chooses to place her child for adoption, she will not have any medical fees, and we are able to help her up to, the state limits at $3,000, but up to $3,000 of living expenses. So we can help her with clothing, with transportation, with housing, with getting her power turned on. So there are things that we can do to support her as she goes through that pregnancy, and counseling afterwards, and no medical bills whatsoever. So just so you know that.
Okay. Questions?
But first of all, Stephen Cornett, I guess I have two connections as far as on the panelists here. One, I've always seen the cooler my parents had, was the one of the old Coca-Cola coolers. I don't know if you have one of those, the old metal ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other one is the radio. Have you ever, are you a big listener of the old radio plays, like Gunsmoke or Johnny Dollar or the Shadow?
I'm familiar with them, and I probably got some cassettes of shows like that I got a long time ago. And a lot of those shows, back before TV, were on radio. And as TV came along in the late 40s, early 50s, many of those shows were simulcast both on radio and TV for maybe 3, 4, 5 years. Not all, but some of them before they transformed it just into TV. So you get a Gunsmoke maybe on radio and TV at the same time for a while back in those days.
I think was it from when it first was there, when the TV show first started in '56 to about, I think, '64, when the radio show of Gunsmoke ended. It's when the radio broadcast ended, because Gunsmoke lasted, was it?
20 years, yeah.
Well, yeah. MASH, I think, were the two longest running shows on TV, and The Simpsons. It's amazing how even the shows that are the same are somewhat different. But what kind of touches me about radio is that whole aspect being the theater of the mind.
Right.
Where even though you can't show things visually, you can, through the effects of it, kind of display a lot of what's going on very, and even convey the atmosphere of it.
Yeah, and even for, let's say, a pro-life ad, you could do that in 30 seconds perhaps, but certainly in a 60-second ad, you could create a skit, if you will, and get that theater of the mind to that person where they're picturing, however they see it, what is being said. So there is that aspect, I think, even though you don't have a visual like you might have TV, you do have that theater of the mind concept that can work if you put something together that's effective and good.
That's, of course, always the point, is being able to put something together that's effective. Maybe something not just with the woman, but also maybe the daughter in the future, thanking her for giving her life, and for instance, all the things she gets to do, marry and have children, and the graduations that not Mrs. such and such.
Yeah.
So, my question is for you, Bill. And I just don't know that much about fee structures for public, or for radio ads, basically. So I'm curious, like, I think you made a good argument that there's a lot of women listening to Christian radio, but is it much more expensive to advertise on a place like Pandora or the local regular radio station, where
Yeah.
we're potentially hitting a lot of different people?
Pandora and those outlets, I'm not sure exactly how their ad structures, some have them, some don't. If you compare Christian radio to secular radio, let's say if you were going to go on any of the stations in Dayton, any of the major, quote, AM, FM stations that maybe are in the, quote, top ratings, you're going to pay a pretty penny. We keep our ads reasonable, and we have two reasons we do that. And Christian radio in general, anymore, it used to be years ago when I started in radio, WING was a top 40 station. It had 30, 40, 50% of the audience. We had maybe a handful or two at the most of stations. Now you have so many options. Everybody has that little piece of the pie, and you program to a specific audience. And you can have a decent audience, even with what we're doing now. We target, but that's what everybody is doing, so their piece of the pie is less. But you're going to pay a lot more. I've had so many advertisers say, a TV station will come to them, or maybe another radio station wanting them to buy an advertising package, and it's just, way out of the ballpark. They can't afford it. For something like we do, reaching a target audience, it makes it affordable for mom and pop businesses and even some of the major advertisers. We've had a great partnership for a long time with Kettering Health Network. They sponsor all of our Christmas music during the Christmas season, 30 Days of Christmas, and some other major things. Kettering Health Network is not mom and pop, but they're getting that word out about what they do here, there, and everywhere, including with us. So it's affordable with us because we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and that means we are in part supported by donors and listeners. We're also allowed to run some limited advertising, but it's not at the high level as a typical station might be to keep our nonprofit status. So we have the best of both worlds. We're supported by listeners and donors, yes, but we can run ads to allow organizations, businesses, and what have you to, be on and to get a message across. So that's, I think, an advantage with us to be able to, to do that. And, one more quick point to make too.
Yep.
With a station like ours, because we can't run unlimited commercials, the message doesn't get lost in the mix. You listen to most stations, they'll play a 40, 45-minute music sweep. Well, they got to make money because that's how they survive. And then they'll take a break for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes of commercials. And if your message is more than 2 or 3 in that mix, people are tuned out mentally, probably, and they're not really listening. And that's the way most stations do it. To play that long music sweep, all the advertisers are bunched up together 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. With us, we don't do that. Ours, the few we have, because we can't do a lot, are spread out, and therefore seldom do we play more than 3 or 4 at the most. And so it doesn't get lost. People are more apt to hear it.
Nice, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, because you guys are donor funded, and I would sort of imagine that this is sort of a tenet of our faith, that thou shalt not kill. Is there any argument for saying, hey, we can run these ads essentially for free, like this is part of our public radio mission, or our Christian radio mission, is to say, let's make sure people know their options.
Well, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we try to do that with a nonprofit like Right to Life and others, where we offer 2 for 1. So basically, we're giving, half of the ads that might be purchased, half are free. And that we can do other things, interviews that we can run with somebody from the organization, because we certainly are on the side of what's being discussed today, absolutely. And maybe features for our news stories. We do a segment on a morning local news of faith, and oftentimes we've done things with Right to Life and others that fit in on our news of faith segment. So we can offer some freebies, if you will, like that,
Yeah.
along with the paid ads.
Cool, sounds great.
You mentioned the black community. Have you ever tried to target the black community to let them know about adoption?
About 3 years ago, we, well, each year we get the Ohio abortion report from the state. So all abortions are, so I know from this, it's anonymous, but I know demographics. So I know the top zip codes in Montgomery County where abortion women are from. And they are predominantly African American. So three and a half years ago, Dayton Right to Life made a commitment to target those 4 zip codes. 45417, 45404, 45426, and 45418, I think. And so, yeah, we have targeted them. It's difficult. There is, I mean, like I said, this is just a cultural change that we have to overcome. But yeah, we have tried targeting. We've done the radio ads. We've done the billboards in those areas. We've done bulk mailings. Like I said, we use lots of different arrows in our quiver again to reach that segment. But again, it's just cultural. It's a culture, you know, grandma's telling them one thing, you know, so we have to keep overcoming. But yeah, we have.
I would say there's a significant amount, probably upwards toward 50% of our placements are child that is African American and Black.
We're getting better.
Yeah.
And where are they being placed?
Oh, our homes are primarily Caucasian.
And I think that's probably I'm sorry, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably the biggest challenge to reversing that trend is more adoptions happening in the Black community.
Well, I think adoptions are happening in the Black community casually.
Right.
So I think,
Yes.
you know, I think that we have to be careful how we think of that. You know, I think it's happening often. It's just not the process that we. Yeah. But so far as people coming to us and wanting to adopt the formal process, it's primarily Caucasian families. So there's some families of other demographics, yeah.
So my question goes back to Bill. One of the things we do at Human Coalition is we test everything. We're testers all the time, testing and innovating and getting results and letting the results of those tests dictate how we move forward. One of the things we've talked about we've never done is radio. I don't think we've done it, not that I can recall anyway. One of the challenges, and I don't know how to overcome these challenges, that we do in some of our internet advertising is we use proxy numbers. So people don't have to remember the number, they click on it because they're searching on their phone primarily, they click on it, it calls. So we market in a specific area using specific ads, specific language. They click to call, then we tweak things and they click a call and it's a different number, they don't know the difference, it's calling the same people, but then we're able to track the effectiveness of each of these ads. How do you do that on radio? Because primarily I would think you've got to use the same number, you want it to be memorable. How long do those ads need to run? How much traffic do you need to get good results? How does all that work?
Yeah, it's hard to really,
Sorry, that's more
it's
technical question.
sometimes hard to track when you're dealing with, well, any form of ad sometimes. That's why I think what you're saying, Marty, the idea of getting it out there in every way you can, billboards, TV, radio, flyers, as much as you're able to do, but hit all areas a little bit, because people who might see an ad in the paper, if you can afford a paper, may or may not see a billboard or watch TV or radio at that time. People that might hear it on our station may not see the billboard, because people are busy, and so you've got to hit as many, go with as many quivers as you can. So that's an excellent point. Radio, it's kind of hard to follow because somebody might have that need and respond right away, but it's that image building, especially for something like this that we promote. Do as much as you can, along with touching all the other bases, and that message hopefully will stick with people. And it might be down the road where they might say, oh yeah, I heard this, something about adoption on Faith and Friends Radio, or I heard something about the pro-life issues. They'll recall it. It might be sometime after the ad has run, but as much as you're able to get that out there to impress in their minds can be helpful. It's hard to really sometimes track the response because of what you said, having a memorable number, and you sometimes just don't know. And maybe while somebody isn't responding to a specific call to action that you have there, they needed to hear what that message was. like I talked about the Frank Pavone, these 60-second spots that are just, right on the money, telling people, somebody might be convinced that maybe abortion isn't the right thing by hearing one of those. And we may never know about that person hearing it, but, we feel with what we're doing, God can use these kinds of messages for his good.
Thank you. So I think it's time to go on to the next presentation.